Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We review anything and everything. And today I want to kind of just get into the talking points of the MacBook Neo, which I don't have one, but at the same time, a lot of people have been talking on it. It's just came out, all these rant and rave about it, and people kind of putting in their thoughts in terms of if it's a good price or not a good deal. I just kind of wanted to kind of dive into the fact that there's a lot of controversy where some people are saying it's a good deal, some people are saying it's not, and I get it. One person had said, MKBHD, who reviews a lot of tech stuff, you guys obviously would know him, had made a great statement when he said, if he said something to the effect of, if you don't know what certain things mean, when he started talking about certain specs and this and that, and he was like, if you don't know what this means, these detailed specs that I'm referring to in terms of this one can handle this and X, Y, and Z, he was like, then he said something to the effect of like, this is not for you if the certain tech lingo I'm talking, I'm paraphrasing because I don't know exactly the way he said it, but the certain type of tech lingo is like, if you understand this laptop's not for you, and if you don't understand it, then it probably is for you. Now it's really geared towards students, which is why they give it a discount. So the normal price on it is $599, so we'll just say $600, and it's $500 for students. I think for students who do not have any kind of laptop, I think it's actually a good choice. And I'm gonna actually tell you why, because there was something that I wanted. I had initially bought this right here is a MacBook Air. This is what I use right now. It's a little underpowered because when I purchased this, unfortunately, I shouldn't be saying this, I feel almost like embarrassed, just joking, but that I got it in 2020 in April, right when the Intel processors were still in, and I wasn't privy to know that the M1 chip was dropping like that October, that same year. And it's like, I bought this and it was like, whatever. But one of the things I really wanted it for was actually doing a lot of writing, creative writing and things of that sort. So I'm going to get into why that kind of thing works great for why the Neo works great for students in general, because certain things that MacBooks come with that Windows computers don't really come with anymore, at least not free and packaged inside the product. A lot of times, these are things that you might have to get productive suites, you might have to get secondary, you might have to pay extra money for. So that's something where, honestly, sorry about that, you guys. Honestly, we're gonna get into that, but that's like a negative when it comes to Windows computers. So as far as the student aspect, and we'll jump into that right now, then we're just gonna cover some of the things I just mentioned. For the student aspect, it's good because, one, if you don't already have any kind of form of Mac, if you have an older Mac, you're probably fine. If you don't have a Mac at all and you're like brand new, maybe going to college, maybe you're starting off in high school where they're really very much pro computer use, which, you know, some schools that you use that in school. I know back in the days when I used to go to college, I actually used to bring my laptop in school to take notes. Now, no one had a problem with it. I'm sure nowadays in high school, that's probably the same thing to a degree. I don't really know. So you guys can kind of fill in on the comments down below if that's the case. But the one thing that a lot of laptops don't come with anymore, Windows laptops, is they don't come with a movie maker. They used to. They used to have the picture program, which was almost like paint program, which almost was like a watered down version of like Photoshop. It was nowhere near anything. It's like maybe like only 10% of what Photoshop was, but it doesn't matter. It was free. It allows you to take a picture, allows you to do some kind of editing stuff on it, whether it's drawing shapes around it, drawing words around it, whatever the case is. Maybe you want to make a little flyer, you could do that. It was something. Movie Maker didn't have as many features as iMovie, but it was free and it allowed you to do all the basic things for video editing. This was very important. They used to also have something called Word Perfect. It was a watered down version of Word. It was one-way compatible with Word. So if you had Word Perfect, which came with the laptop, you would be able to do a document, read it in Word, but you couldn't do it in Word and read it on your document, but it still gave you a way to kind of play around with things. I don't know if it had a spreadsheet app or anything like that, but at least you had those three things, which I think are core, very important things that any student would need. Anybody who's like doing basic office work, maybe you're the type of person who's like, you work in an office, you whatever the case is, and you need to deal with like basic programs like that. Probably not so much the movie maker, even though I think everyone's going to really want that, because if you do some kind of snipping and cutting of some videos, even nowadays, since everyone's got videos on their phones and this and that, whatever the case is, that might be a thing you may at some point want to dive into. But having a word processor, now there are free ones out there you could download, but the average person is not going to try to seek what's free. They're going to say, even a student is going to be like, well, what's going to come with it? You know, am I buying this? What comes with it? Now, I shopped around and bought a relative of mine, a affordable, it was nicely spec'd for the basics, Intel processor, but decently spec'd to handle all the basic kind of stuff, word processor and this and that. It was just a shame that it didn't come with a word processor. I had to find one that I could download for free. It didn't come with a movie maker. It doesn't come with any of those kind of things like a paint app or a picture type of app or anything like that. So that's where those components coming with a MacBook Neo, I would honestly say, make it where I would say it's a good value on that standpoint, because that I would calculate that to be about, I want to say $150 worth, to be honest with you, in my opinion. I don't know 100%, but back in the days when you would pay for Microsoft Office Suite or whatever the case is, what they come with, let me go over what they come with. I'm sorry, I went over what PC computers or laptops don't come with anymore. What the Mac comes with is something called Pages. It's their own word processor. It is backwards compatible with Word. And also, I believe within that, or I think it's called, I forget the name of it, but there is a program for if you're doing, what's the other one that goes with Microsoft Office? Gosh, I'm having a brain fart right now, but the one we have charts and stuff like that. But that program, put it down below in the comments if you guys remember, or later on I'll put it in the comments when I remember. But that program that usually does charts and stuff like that, I think that Pages does that. If not, they have another program that does that. So you have that. So there is this kind of office suite. You have iMovie, which is actually really good. It's very intuitive. It has all the things up front. It's pretty easy to learn. You can watch a YouTube video to see how to learn to do all the ins and outs, but it really gives you a lot that you can do for the basics. Like even a pro using that, though they might feel like they're going to outgrow it, you could still do all the basic stuff you want to do on it, whether it's cutting clips, transitions, adding words to come across the screen, all that stuff, you can do it. And it's very easy, just drag and drop. So that's a great thing as far as like the base standard for video editing, I feel. And then what else? You do have your basic preview photo app, allows you to crop, allows you to like make things on it, like shapes, letters over your picture. So it's the equivalent of the paint program, almost like on the Windows back in the days. It's very basic, but it gives you basic stuff that you know how to do, that when you open up your photo, it's right there when you open up your photo, the same program you're using to open up your photos. So that's not really going to be used for like, say, things like color grading and all other kind of stuff on your thing. At least I don't think so. As far as, if you shoot photography and whatever the case is, but it allows you to do some basic stuff. Maybe you can do that, but I know it allows you to do some basic stuff. So my point is, for a student, it comes with all the kind of things they want, or just a regular person who works in an office, it comes with all the things that they kind of need off just the base. If you bought, like, say, on a sale, $300 like PC laptop, it's not coming with none of those things. So essentially, you probably have to spend like maybe $150 to get those things. And even then, if it's a subscription base, you're going to be paying continuously. So, excuse me. So that to me is something where you definitely lose out with that, which is why I think like the MacBook Neo is great in that regards. Now I'm going to go into the aspect where some people might question it if you know more about computers, is that just last year, the M4 dropped for 2024, the M4 MacBook Air, and that was the cheapest version, and it started at $1,000, which was $100 cheaper than I think the previous one, the previous MacBook M3 Air. But here's the thing about it. Very soon on, it went on sale for like $800. Then I seen it go even more on sale to $750, and this wasn't student based, it wasn't anything. anyone could buy it. It was right on Amazon for like months. It was at like I want to say it was almost almost more than 8 months of being $800, and for $750 it was at least like 3 months, maybe even longer, of being $750. I think it was even longer than that. And so because when it was, I want to say like either $800, I actually bought one for my cousin because he was heavy into video editing and whatnot, and I really wanted to get him started in that space because he had an older computer and the deals were there. I was like, I want to jump on it, but I don't need it right now, but I wanted to jump on it. My point is that at $750 versus $600, it's a no-brainer you go for an M4. This is where things get funny though with Apple. Right after they announced the MacBook Neo and the M5 Air, the M5 Air starts at $1,100. I see now on Amazon the M4 Air going for the same price. Just because Apple knows if we sell it for the discounted price we had it for, even at the $800 price, it makes the $600 price of the MacBook Neo make no sense. So anyone who's familiar with specs and all that, it makes no sense. Now, I wrote down some of the specs here really quick. The Neo comes with an A18 Pro chip, which is from the iPhone. I think I don't have an iPhone, but the previous generation iPhone, like Pro, I guess. So 2025's iPhone. And it comes with 8 gigs of RAM memory. Now, the M4 had 16 gigs of memory base, which is expandable. The Neo is not, but no one's buying it for expandability anyway, because even if you could expand the memory, you would just then start going into air territories. But 16 gigabytes base memory, the RAM memory, the storage memory on the SSD or whatever, the hard drive, was 256, which is not great, but it's also not the end of the world, especially if you're used to using external storage or whatever the case is. And if you're kind of a beginner editor or whatever the case is, the point is it was able to handle things like 4K video editing and all that kind of stuff pretty well, especially for your average person who's making videos and whatnot. It really was pretty good for that. At $800 was the normal sale. I'm not going to say the $750 at $800. So they took that off, and having the M4 chip was like amazing. They took that off of the market, at least at the price that it was. And I think this is where things get a little confusing because, like I said before, if you're not in the know, if you are in a space where you're a student or you're getting it for your child or like a relative or whatever the case is, the Neo is going to be fine. Anybody who is trying to go into that creative space, they say that the Neo is around the equivalency of an M1. But at the end of the day, knowing that you could be working on an M4 if you find a good discount on it just makes it better. And like I said, the student price is one thing for the Neo, but if you're not getting that student price, $600, if you can still find a place that's selling the M4 for $800, the M4 Air, I would say get the M4 Air over the Neo. If you have a Intel-based MacBook from 2020 or before, and you are thinking about upgrading, I would say do not get the Neo. It might serve you, but the bump in specs, not that it won't be significant versus an Intel processor, because the M1 was way big difference than the Intel processors, but the jump, if you're doing video editing on an Intel one, and this was the base Intel Air right before you had the M1s. This was a i3, a current i3 at the time, Intel processor. You can do 1080p video editing on this at better than one-to-one like video editing. What I mean by that is if your video is 30 minutes long, it will probably process it in maybe about 15 minutes in terms of like, you doing some cuts, you adding some things on iMovie, which is obviously optimized for iMovie. If you're having a bigger task load than that, The Neo, even though it's a jump, you're probably gonna go into a space where you're gonna start doing heavier editing to where you're like, I don't have time for waiting for like maybe a 1-to-2 ratio in terms of how long it takes for me to video edit or whatever the case is. You're gonna say, you know what? I'm about to start doing bigger things. I'm going to start doing 4K, this and that. Yes, it can handle that, but for that, let me be a somewhat future-proof and go for something a little better. For that, I would say just try to find an M4 on sale if you can. And those are my thoughts on that, you guys. As always, like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.